Every Monday is your chance to choose the big topics on your mind, the biggest issues of the day, or totally left field. It's your show, your say. Joining me now to discuss it all, my good friend, of course, Alan Jones. Alan, I'm going to start a little bit unusually because I want to take a moment tonight to show a bit of support to the Australian's journalist, reporter, Ms Baxendale. For a number of months, you've watched her, I've watched you doggedly pursuing truth in these Daniel Andrews daily press conferences. All the questions that matter she asks, all the questions that we're not sort of getting answers to, she puts out there for the Premier. Now, for that, I have to say she has been the victim of some pretty horrific online trolling. These attacks are from, anonymous nobodies all sitting behind their keyboards. But there's also been some members of the Australian Press Pack attack Ms Baxendale as well. I posted on my Facebook late last night my support for her, and I tell you, my viewers came out absolutely behind her. One of them, Danielle Spazzeri, writes that Rachel, continue speaking the truth and holding those accountable. You're battling for all those who've lost their jobs and businesses. You are our voice. Stand proud. We stand with you. Pretty shocking stuff, Alan.
Yes, I made contact with Rachel last week to indicate she had my support. The performance of Daniel Andrews towards this woman has been disgusting and disgraceful. And indeed, last Monday, in an exchange, he virtually accused her of lying when, in fact, it was Daniel Andrews who was lying. Rachel put a question to the Premier by saying that counsel assisting had recommended to Judge Coate that public servants being prosecuted. Andrews challenged her and said that there's been no report. Judge Coate hasn't issued a report. That will come. I didn't say Judge Coate. He cut her off again. She said, I was saying that counsel assisting had said. He persisted in arguing that he had listened to her, that that wasn't what she'd said. And Daniel Andrews, quite frankly, in order to make this girl feel uncomfortable, he basically lied. He actually said publicly the opposite of what Rachel was saying. And, I mean, when people behave like that, in public office behave like that towards someone who's only trying to elicit the truth, then those people are themselves utterly discredited.
Yeah, I do watch him going toe-to-toe with some of the female journalists. Think to myself, well, they're females, but imagine if Tony Abbott or someone else was like that at the podium.
Yeah,
all right,
absolutely.
Let's get into my viewer questions. This one in particular, I'm interested in this, from Karen Green. She's asking, where is the High Court decision on borders? Surely this is in the national interest that it should be expedited, particularly to stop these premiers who think they could rule and restrict our movement. Clive Palmer, as you know, is fighting against the WA hard border. He's got a High Court date set for, we think, November 3 and 4, but that's a long way away.
A long way away. Well, you and I have said for months now, why? I mean, if a Liberal government won't defend the Constitution, who will? And Section 92 provides free traffic across borders, and this is a nonsense. On the one hand, we're sort of saying we're going to open the economy. How can you open the economy when you're closing down the borders? I might add, Peter, this also applies to the federal government. Where in the world is the federal government stopping people from leaving their country? I mean, what this is doing to tourism and travel and aviation and everything is horrific. But the government was going to join Clive Palmer in the action in the High Court against the West Australian government. It's quite clear that the Attorney-General, Christian Porter, is from WA. It's quite clear that people in the WA had bought this argument that we're all going to die unless someone actually does something. So they were quite partial to the notion of the border being closed. It's clear that Scott Morrison was then being advised if he joined Clive Palmer, it would be an action against the West Australian government and against the West Australian people, which would be electorally damaging. So the Commonwealth government withdrew. I mean, to actually put personal political interests ahead of the constitutional entitlement of the people of Australia seems quite extraordinary. So your caller is absolutely right. It's very disturbing that your national government won't defend the Constitution simply because there might be some political disadvantage to them for doing it.
I've got to ask you before we go, this news that broke a week ago, broadly speaking, about the removal of Cardinal Pell, now former Cardinal Pell, but revelations overnight, there's been, over $1 million allegedly paid into bank accounts in Australia. The allegation goes connected to the pursuit and trial over Cardinal George Pell. I don't think I've seen anything like it.
No, you haven't. But have you ever seen anything like justice in Victoria? I mean, you've got the Nicola Gobbo case. You've got this whole business now about coronavirus. You've got this George Pell prosecution. And I might add that the person who now may have to adjudicate on the industrial manslaughter charges that members of the government might have to face was the very person who agreed that the matter of Pell should go to a trial. So, I mean, the whole thing, I don't think you can rely on Victorian officials to investigate this. And I take your point. AUSTRAC's got to come into the field here. In all of this, though, Peter, I try not to be overly critical, but the federal government is silent in relation to all of this and this behaviour of the Victorian government. And Daniel Andrews has got to be asked by somebody, what does he know about any of this and what is he doing to investigate the veracity of it? It's a staggering story. Someone suggesting that funding was provided from the Vatican to some people, known or unknown, in Victoria to secure a prosecution of George Pell because he'd upset people in the Vatican as he was trying to secure economic integrity. I mean, it's a staggering story.
It is a staggering story, and I'll repeat again. A former Cardinal Betchu denies all the allegations in relation to Cardinal George Pell. We will see where this goes. Alan Jones, thank you for your time.
Thank you. You're looking splendid.
Oh, thank you, says you in the white jacket. All right, serious stuff. Let's get back to it.